There's something, bro, that like I discovered. So like I've been looking into the Contra war for like about a week, bro, a week and a half or so. So like a lot of people, they know Caro Quintero. That's Rafael Caro Quintero. That's him. You know what I mean? A lot of people know him as Rafael Caro Quintero. In the research that I've been doing, there's a Rafael Quintero that he used to be a CIA agent. Whenever Barry Seal snitched and he told the CIA and the DEA everything that was going on, they killed him. They blamed Pablo Escobar. Now I'm starting to think that it wasn't Pablo Escobar, that it was also the CIA that killed Barry Seal. The reason that I say that is because after Barry Seal got killed, he had a couple pilots. Those pilots, they still continue to work with the CIA and with the government. One of the people that was working with Barry Seal, right after Barry Seal got killed, Rafael Quintero, which is the CIA agent, got in contact with him. Okay, so now that Barry Seal is not around anymore, Rafael Quintero, the CIA agent, told the smuggler, now Felix Rodriguez is going to be giving you the orders on how to do stuff.
Later, he comes face to face with this man, veteran CIA operative Rafael Quintero, who lives in Miami. Eyewitness News has been unable to reach him.
This guy, Rafa, seemed like he was like the boss. Rafa said, don't worry, so we have the cooperation of the government.
In January of '86, Quintero sends for Tolliver to meet with him in Ecuador. Quintero tells Tolliver he's to work with a new contact, replacing Barry Seal. That contact is a man Tolliver later identifies as Felix Rodriguez. Rodriguez, alias Max Gomez, another Cuban exile with CIA ties who has worked closely with Quintero. A few months later, Tolliver gets his final instructions from Rodriguez.
Don't bring anything with you. Don't bring any maps. Don't bring identification.
And it's just fucking crazy, bro, that like Rafael Quintero, his whole life, he has always said that he was not the one that killed them. But the thing is that like they say that he gave the order out. So Rafael Quintero actually gave the order out to kidnap Kiki Camarena, which he was a CIA agent. Rafael Quintero, he's the kingpin. They have the same name. How did that work? I don't know how that worked, but a lot of people, when you hear the name Rafael Quintero, you immediately think of the kingpin. You don't know the CIA agent.
Mexico has extradited 29 suspected cartel members, including Rafael Caro Quintero. He's accused of killing a DEA agent in 1985.
Drug boss wanted for 40 years, appearing in federal court. Rafael Caro Quintero is accused of orchestrating the killing of a DEA agent in 1985 in Mexico.
This morning, 4 decades after he was convicted in Mexico for orchestrating the murder of an American drug agent, one of the most notorious Mexican narco traffickers is locked in a Brooklyn jail. Mexico expelled Rafael Caro Quintero, flying him to New York, where he pleaded not guilty to charges of trafficking enormous quantities of marijuana and cocaine into the United States and leading a continuing criminal enterprise, a charge that could get him the death penalty.
An American drug agent and his pilot were brutally beaten before they were killed.
In 1985, prosecutors say Caro Quintero arranged the kidnapping, torture, and killing of DEA agent Enrique "Kiki" Camarena.
Agente Camarena.
Dramatized in the Netflix series Narcos.
Hola, Sammy. Mi comandante quiere hablar con usted.
40 years later, dozens of DEA agents looked on as Caro Quintero was brought into court in Camarena's handcuffs.
There is no criminal that can escape the reach of the DEA and the rule of law of the United States of America. We stand here united today. We will never forget, and we will fight on.
The aging drug kingpin was known as the narco of narcos. Federal prosecutors called him one of the most notorious drug lords of the modern era. Caro Quintero was among 29 cartel leaders Mexico handed over to the United States under pressure from the Trump administration. And
let's get it. In a little bit, we're about to go fill up on gas. We already watched the vehicle right now. Hey man, boy, look at this hoe. But nah, it's a real nigga shit right now. I already put an appointment so I get a haircut. But like, that shit is taking a long ass time, fam. Right now I'm about to get some food and shit. Let's get it. 33. Ooh. Cause I was eating, bro, it just got dirty. Let's go buy a new shirt real quick. Shout out to the Latte Factory. Let's go in there, we're about to smoke right now. Let's go ahead and eat this shit. 500 milligram ocean water. Shout out to Quality Farmers. So this whole video, bro, I'm gonna go ahead and break it down in 7 parts. First part is gonna be who is Rafael Caro Quintero. The second part is gonna be who is Kiki CAMARENA. 3 is gonna be everything that happened around the 1980s, the war getting funded by drugs. Part 5, we're gonna go ahead and go into why Kiki CAMARENA got killed. Part 6, Barry Seal has a lot to do with this, bro. So we're also gonna go ahead and do a whole little part just for him. Let's go ahead and smoke this. I think this one got 2 of them in there still. Oh, that's the one that only has 1. That's a good size. Most important question right now, who is Caro Quintero? Let's go ahead and figure that shit out, fam. A lot of people may not know this shit, but look, let me give you a little brief history.
Following days of U.S. complaints about foot dragging and even outright hindrance by some Mexican police officials, word tonight from Mexico that 3 people are now under arrest in connection with this month's kidnapping of a U.S. drug enforcement agent.
Another suspect, Rafael Caro Quintero, was spotted by the DEA as he was preparing to depart the Guadalajara airport.
We asked that he be detained because there was a warrant outstanding for this individual, Caro Quintero. There was a confrontation between different units of the Mexican police forces, the DFS and the Mexican Federal Judicial Police, and after some discussion, he was allowed to depart. His current whereabouts are unknown.
Still awaiting trial for allegedly ordering the murder is drug kingpin Quintero, being held in Mexico City with another suspect. An escape attempt by the pair last fall was headed off when authorities discovered tunnels being dug near their prison.
Rafael Caro Quintero nació el 3 de octubre de 1952 en Badiraguato, Sinaloa. Tuvo 10 hermanos. Sus padres se dedicaban al campo. En poco tiempo logró amasar una fortuna calculada en $300 millones, producto del narcotráfico.
Póngale que sí haya de lo que tengo, que sea de 7, 8 casas que tengo, que sean 2 de narcotráfico, pero 6 no son.
Ah, ya. ¿Por qué el narcotráfico, Rafael?
¿Cómo? No lo entiendo.
¿Por qué te dedicaste o por qué te
Me gustó.
¿Por qué? ¿Porque te daba dinero fácil? Porque
No, nada es fácil, señorita.
No, yo sé que no, pero ¿por qué te gustó? ¿Qué te incentivó?
No sé.
¿Cuánto tiempo hace que tienes estas actividades?
Pues hace poco, 1 año o 2.
¿Sientes arrepentimiento ahora?
Pues, ¿qué le dijera? Arrepentido nunca estoy. Lo hecho ya está hecho y ya estoy aquí. ¿Qué quiere que haga?
Mexican police let a known drug dealer get away, who was under federal indictment also in the kidnapping of an American drug agent in Mexico. That's the charge being made now by the head of drug enforcement in the U.S., Francis Mullen.
One of those whom we suspect, one of those traffickers involved in the kidnapping, was spotted in an aircraft leaving Guadalajara on Saturday night. He was stopped by Mexican police, the judicial police, and allowed to leave. And we now learn that he had as protection members of the DFS, of the Department of Federal Security.
El piloto del avión del narcotraficante declaró una falsa emergencia para aterrizar en San José de Costa Rica, según Alexis Solís, quien presidió una comisión parlamentaria que investigó la visita de Caro Quintero.
Con base en esa información, pues se le da acceso a la pista.
Las autoridades mexicanas lograron ubicar el refugio de Caro Quintero por una llamada que hizo su acompañante a sus padres.
Yo me vine por mi propia voluntad y estoy feliz con él.
Agentes de la DEA, apoyados por la policía local, rodearon la casa y detuvieron a Caro Quintero, quien fue deportado a México.
Él estaba en un cuarto con ropas menores, con una muchacha mexicana. Habían armas, había dinero, joyas, carros. Algo que nos impresionó como país era un revólver que tenía en la cacha incrustaciones de diamantes.
Llegaron tirándonos ahí, rafagándonos, de una forma como si hubiéramos sido unos delincuentes.
Fue expulsado del país y desde entonces guarda prisión en México.
¿Por qué quisiste conocer Costa Rica?
Me dicen que era un país muy tranquilo y por lo que veo, no.
¿No conociste a Rafael Quintero?
Oh, no, viejo, ese viejo ya lo conocí. No, pues ese viejo era bueno, pero no se arrimaba para allá. Para los finales no se arrimaba, y si se arrimaba, nunca lo conocí yo. No, a Caro Quintero no, viejo. Y lo Caro Quintero no era ni de Ojinaga, era de edad de Camargo. Era muy pudiente, muy cuidado.
Tenía mucho poder.
Oh, sí. Y era muy bravo. No bravo que él decía algo, no. Que lo que él hacía, yo él lo hacía. Pues si no fue toda la camarena lo que le pasó. supuestamente dijo que el juez que lo mató, pero no fue que lo mató él.
¿Quién fue?
Camarena, ¿sabes? No, él dijo que toda la vida que no fue él, mijo. Fue con los güeyes que se mantenían atacados del murero. O sea, es que alguien más lo mandó a matar, pero cuando andaba con la gente de Quintero. Pero a Carlos Quintero le dijeron, tú lo mataste, güey. No, dijo, yo nunca lo maté a este vato. Pero le cayó pedo porque andaba la gente de Carlos Quintero con él. Ah, no, mijo, Estados Unidos un chingo de pedo. Había un chingo de gente por el pedo.
¿Tú miraste
no,
eso?
más a él no. A él nunca lo pudo agarrar hasta que alguien lo vendió. Cumplió la condena, amigo, y Estados Unidos lo volvió a hacer otra vez. Pero pinche madre. Sí, porque está muy enojado Estados Unidos por la que le mataron.
A él, ¿tú sabes qué fue lo que le pasó a ese señor?
No. Yo lo único que sabía es que a él le tumbaron una siembra muy grande que tenía. Y luego batallaba para regarle el güey porque pues la regaba por sequía. No, casi no tenía agua cuando la tumbaron. Y después se asoció con un gabacho de aquí, muy grande. Que ese vato ese vato era grandísimo, quién sería, no sé. Ese güey lo de un avión.
¿El avión para qué se lo dio?
Pues no sé, el avión, pero le dio un avión y le dio muebles, pero muebles bueno, amigo, muebles de... No sabes, porque hay que Estados Unidos. Y luego le mandó soldados para que le enseñara a tirar.
¿Los soldados de qué?
Pues sí. Bueno, que sea...
¿Señor quién era?
No sé. Claro que no eran soldados, yo creo ya, amigo, eran de los que habían sido soldados. Me imagino yo.
Porque esa gente está conectada con Estados Unidos, ¿no? Con el presidente y todo eso, no sé.
Bueno, le mandó gente para que se enseñara a tirar y luego gente para que peleara. Para que no los matara si no quería matarlos.
Que nomás los golpeara y los agarrara.
Los mató. Sí, soy famoso.
Rafael.
Y luego el pueblo de él hizo una ciudad. A todos les hizo una pinche casa. A toda la gente le hizo casa, les dio para comer y todo. No, muy buena persona, muy buena. Nadie trabajaba, todos trabajaban con él. Pero no vendiendo marihuana ni nada, no. Nomás trabajando ahí para lo que él necesitara ahí. Que lo cuidaran. Gente que entrara al pueblo, que dijeran quién entró y todo eso. Pero que él lo sacara vendiendo, ¿no? Supuestamente se le atravesó otro policía, pero de México, que quería robar también. Le cobró y al tubo le cobró mucho. También lo mató. Pero él sí lo mató. Él sí dijo que él lo había matado. Era un capitán general del ejército. Pero ella quería mucho a él. Le cobró una cota y no ella quería más. Sí, lo mató.
El 7 de noviembre de 1984, una gran columna de humo remontaba los cielos del desierto de Chihuahua, México. Ardían las primeras de 8,000 toneladas de marihuana sembradas en el rancho El Búfalo.
Esta cantidad en el mercado negro podría costar $1 billón, sí, $1 billón.
La producción estaba casi lista para exportar al mercado insaciable de Estados Unidos.
En Búfalo, a 30 kilómetros de la ciudad de Jiménez, Chihuahua, empaquetaban la marihuana o entabicaban y la enviaban a Estados Unidos.
Se le conoció como la redada del siglo. Autoridades mexicanas, acompañadas por agentes de la DEA, tomaron control del lugar donde fueron arrestados 7,000 trabajadores.
De consignarlos, habría un problema. Ni en la cárcel de la ciudad de Chihuahua cabrían los campesinos.
Un rancho enorme, protegido por muchos gatilleros, con una inversión no solo en tierra, sino también en tecnología. Caro Quintero rentó o compró y ahí levantó todo un emporio de producción de marihuana sin semilla que era muy famosa y muy demandada en Estados Unidos.
Nomás en Búfalo, Chihuahua, tenía 37,000 personas trabajando para él.
Él mandaba el pago de sus trabajadores en tráileres y llenos de dinero.
¿Cómo fue que le dio por la ganadería y la agricultura?
Siempre me gustó eso.
El rancho El Búfalo estaba bajo el control de Rafael Caro Quintero, un narcotraficante de solo 32 años que había invertido más de $20 millones en el montaje del gigantesco complejo.
Decidimos viajar a San Simón para entender por qué uno de los hombres más buscados por Estados Unidos, sentenciado en México por asesinar a uno de sus agentes antinarcóticos, Enrique Camarena, en 1985, había elegido ese refugio enclavado en la Sierra Madre Occidental mexicana. El viaje desde Los Mochis terminó en caminos sin pavimento ni señalamientos, con arroyos que cortan las carreteras a capricho. Solo encontramos un retén de hombres armados. Ellos nos dieron su permiso para entrar con la condición de no grabarlos. Y tras 7 horas de trayecto en los que en muchos momentos nuestro camino fue literalmente el río, por fin llegamos a la vivienda marcada con el número 6 de San Simón, un rincón oculto del mundo.
Es que esta casa está estratégicamente escondida. ¿Por qué? Porque desde la entrada del terreno no se ve. Y además, estos grandes árboles en el patio la protegen de la vigilancia aérea.
Y es pequeña para el terreno, no más de 100 metros cuadrados de una construcción modesta, compuesta apenas por 3 sencillas habitaciones cuyo único lujo es el aire acondicionado y 2 baños muy ordinarios.
Y la primera habitación es una que sirve como comedor, una especie de sala. Como podemos ver, hay 4 sillas aquí. Y aquí en el comedor hay más, por lo que podemos suponer que Caro Quintero, cuando se encontraba aquí, no estaba solo.
En la alacena de plástico todavía había restos de ingredientes para cocinar y una caja de calzado.
Botas AA, la nueva colección hecha en León, Guanajuato, y aquí donde habla del estilo dice es una imitación avestruz.
La segunda habitación tenía 2 camas individuales, donde después supimos que dormían los 2 guardias que vivían con el capo. A Nájera, quien nos guió hasta este escondido lugar, los sicarios le dieron la misma explicación. Luego inspeccionamos la habitación principal con un taburete a los pies de la cama king size. La versión oficial es que Caro Quintero, al saberse perseguido, salió de la propiedad por una ladera y comenzó a correr, escondiéndose entre los matorrales. Pero los marinos no iban solos. Los acompañaba Max, esta perrita Bloodhound de 6 años de edad, experta en rescates, quien lo encontró en su escondite.
Físicamente él ya no estaba a 100% con movilidad corporal.
Agentes y exagentes de la DEA aseguran que para detenerlo cooptaron incluso a sus familiares y que entre 2013 y 2022 el equipo especializado en su búsqueda ejecutó al menos 12 fallidas operaciones de captura.
¿Usted tuvo información de esto o cómo fue que se manejó este tema de las detenciones?
Mire,
¿No hubo tantos intentos?
Aunque cuando le preguntaron al presidente de México cuántos intentos llevaban tratando de detenerlo, Andrés Manuel López Obrador eludió responder. Una de las operaciones fallidas ocurrió el 14 de agosto de 2015. Los marinos llegaron en varios Black Hawks hasta las comunidades de Guanajuato, Las Juntas, Babunica y La Noria, el lugar de nacimiento de Caro Quintero, en Badiraguato, en el corazón del Triángulo Dorado sinaloense. La directora de la Agencia Antidrogas de Estados Unidos, Sam Milgram, escribió: nuestro increíble equipo de la DEA en México trabajó en colaboración para capturar y arrestar a Caro Quintero. Es el resultado de años de sangre, sudor y lágrimas. Sin su trabajo, Caro no enfrentaría a la justicia, expresó. La noche de su captura, el sinaloense llegó al aeropuerto de la Ciudad de México y rápidamente, en medio de un fuerte operativo de seguridad, fue trasladado vía terrestre al penal de máxima seguridad del Altiplano en el Estado de México, donde continúa esperando su destino final.
Un día que el narco de narcos nunca olvidará.
Él estaba en un cuarto con ropas menores, con una muchacha mexicana. Habían armas, había dinero, joyas, carros.
La vida criminal de Rafael Caro Quintero dio un giro sin retorno tras el asesinato del agente de la DEA, Enrique Camarena, en 1985. El llamado narco de narcos se convirtió en un fugitivo desafiante y temerario. Gerardo Reyes, de Univisión Investiga, siguió sus pasos.
Una gran columna de humo remontaba los cielos del desierto de Chihuahua, México, el 7 de noviembre de 1984. Ardían las primeras de 8,000 toneladas de marihuana sembradas en el rancho El Búfalo. Autoridades mexicanas y agentes de la DEA ocuparon el lugar donde fueron arrestados 7,000 trabajadores.
De consignarlos, habría un problema. Ni en la cárcel de la ciudad de Chihuahua cabrían los campesinos.
Y con mis ranchos ganaderos y...
Caro Quintero tenía 32 años y El Búfalo era su gran sueño de narco. En la casa de la calle Lope de Vega se lo entregaron vendado a Caro Quintero. Según el testimonio de López, Caro Quintero abrazó a Camarena y le dijo al oído: "Te lo dije que te iba a tener en mis manos, hijo de p***".
In the hunt for a Mexican drug lord who was wanted for orchestrating the torture and murder of a DEA agent back in the mid-1980s.
Rafael Caro Quintero was convicted of the kidnapping, the torture, and the murder of agent Enrique Kiki Camarena in 1985. He was sentenced to 40 years in a Mexican prison, but was released on a technicality by a Mexican judge in 2013. He then disappeared, and Quintero is from Sinaloa. He's best known as one of the co-founders of the Guadalajara cartel that trafficked cocaine, heroin, and marijuana from Mexico to the U.S. in the 70s and the 80s.
Mexico has extradited 29 suspected cartel members, including Rafael Caro Quintero. He's accused of killing a DEA agent in 1985.
That if you come after us, if you hurt one of us, there is no obstacle we cannot overcome. There is no border we will not cross. And there is no criminal that can escape the reach of the DEA and the rule of law of the United States of America. We stand here united today. We will never forget, and we will fight on.
Well, Mexican drug cartel boss pleading not guilty to a slew of charges in Brooklyn federal court today.
All right, he's one of more than 24 accused cartel members just handed over to the U.S.
This is the video from last night, and it shows Rafael Caro Quintero.
Two Mexican drug lords just faced a judge in Brooklyn this afternoon, one of them linked to the murder of a DEA agent 40 years ago.
The DEA agents witnessing, as you mentioned, a moment 40 years in the making as Rafael Caro Quintero, the man said to have planned the 1985 killing of Special DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, finally faced a federal judge today. Hundreds of DEA agents making their presence felt, packing a Brooklyn federal court today in a powerful display of unity for one of their own killed 4 decades ago.
Special Agent Camarena wasn't just a DEA agent. He was a husband, a father, a son, a brother.
The feds say 72-year-old Rafael Caro Quintero orchestrated the killing. This is video of Quintero arriving last night at JFK Airport, being led out of the plane by DEA agents.
The aging drug kingpin was known as the narco of narcos. Federal prosecutors called him one of the most notorious drug lords of the modern era. Caro Quintero was among 29 cartel leaders Mexico handed over to the United States under pressure from the Trump administration, and days before U.S. tariffs are scheduled to go into effect.
I ain't gonna lie to you. Me personally, bro, I really do believe that our government was involved in killing Kiki Camarena. There's a lot of things, bro, that like pushes my mindset that is actually what happened.
40 years after the death of DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, his family is still searching for justice.
Kiki's family is now suing the cartel members responsible for his death after President Trump designated cartels as terrorist organizations. Our Sierra Encina spoke with Camarena's family and has more on what they're asking for.
It's one of the most high-profile murders of a U.S. official by a Mexican drug cartel. In 1985, DEA agent Enrique Kiki Camarena was kidnapped, brutally interrogated, and murdered by the Guadalajara cartel.
My brother was out there trying to do good and get rid of these marijuana fields, but it continued and it continued. And these cartels still to this day continue. Is there ever going to be an end?
Mirna Camarena is Kiki Camarena's sister. She was also working for the DEA when her brother was kidnapped. She says it was a Sunday when her boss knocked on her door and broke the news that her brother was missing.
And he says, your brother's been taken. He didn't use the word kidnapped. He used the word taken. And I said, what do you mean? He's a policeman. He can't be taken. He can defend himself. He's been kidnapped. He says, and I don't remember, that I fainted.
A month later, she got the news that Kiki's body was found. He was found next to the pilot who flew him over a marijuana field operated by the Guadalajara cartel to collect evidence. For Mirna, the discovery of her brother's body was the start of a new road, a road to get justice for her brother.
Why him? What did he do other than his job?
3 cartel leaders were held responsible for Camarena's death: Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo, and Rafael Caro Quintero. The family filed a lawsuit against all 3 and the Sinaloa cartel last week, seeking compensation for substantial physical, emotional, and psychological damages. It comes as Caro Quintero is facing federal charges for Camarena's murder. Reports say he could face the death penalty.
We have waited 40 years for this. 40 years. And he's finally here.
It's something that Mirna says her mother would have loved to have seen.
When my mother was on her deathbed, she said, I wish I could be here when he's arrested and brought to the U.S. But she didn't make it. Excuse me. So that makes it even harder.
She says that when Quintero was expelled to the U.S., she prayed and told her mom that she got her wish.
He will always be remembered by my 3 boys, as little as the 2 younger ones can possibly remember.
Motivator for all 3 of us, and he also was a stern dad, but at the same time he was loving.
They brought Kiki home in March of 1985. Brought him home to his family and his country with honors. A DEA special agent, he had been abducted, tortured, and murdered in Mexico by Mexican drug traffickers. 2 full decades have passed since then. But time has not dimmed the memory of Enrique Kiki Camarena's terrible and savage death, of the events that followed, or, most importantly, of the man himself. The child who grew into Kiki Camarena, the man, was born in Mexico, but at the age of 9, moved with his family to the California border town of Calexico. A high school basketball and football player, he also worked on the yearbook, was voted best all-around senior, and found the woman he would share his life with.
Very tall, always walked with his head up high. Very athletic, very bright. And the reason I say that is because I had to study a whole lot harder than he did, and he would just come out with flying colors with his grades.
After high school, Kiki worked his way through college, graduating with a degree in criminal justice. He enlisted in the Marines, served his tour, and came home to join, first, the Calexico Fire Department, and then, when there was an opening, the town's police department. But Kiki Camarena wanted to do more. And so, in 1974, at the age of 26, he became a special agent with the year-old Drug Enforcement Administration, the federal government's newly created lead agency in the war on illicit drugs. It was a job he was born to do.
He admired the work that the agents did, and now I know more than ever that he was extremely good at it, not only because he spoke the Spanish language, but because he could reach out to these people, both good and bad, and he could befriend them in such a way that it was amazing how well he did, and I think that's why he was such a great agent.
By 1980, Camarena was a husband and the father of 3 young sons. Professionally, he was a decorated 7-year DEA veteran, headed for the organization's Guadalajara, Mexico field office. It was a dangerous assignment, and the whole family was aware of it.
I was aware of the dangers because, although they didn't tell me, my parents didn't tell me much about the true dangers that were there, I could see the responses to it. I wasn't allowed to cross the street. I wasn't allowed to be away from eye shot in front of the house. Most of the time I was inside with my friends, or we'd go inside their house, but I wasn't out on the street much.
The danger was real, and it struck home on February the 7th, 1985. On his way to meet Mika for lunch, 37-year-old Kiki Camarena was abducted. He would never see his wife or family again.
He was approached by 5 men outside of the building, and I understand his head was covered so he wouldn't be able to identify him, and he was shoved into a small Volkswagen car that was parked in the street. And they took him away. He was kidnapped, and he was never seen alive again.
Waiting for 30 days for them to find him was the hardest thing. Hoping. And asking, literally asking agents, will he still be an agent?
What happened to Kiki Camarena inspired Elaine Shannon to write a book about it called Desperados.
It was a story about corruption. It was a story about betrayal. As I started to get more and more information, and then as Camarena's body turned up, and it was clear that he'd been murdered, and then as we learned that he had been tortured, and then as we learned that he had been tortured by people who were connected to the security services in Mexico, it took on a really ugly dimension and a fascinating story. There was betrayal at every level.
The death of Kiki Camarena shocked the Drug Enforcement Administration, but it also galvanized the organization from top to bottom. All of DEA's resources were committed to bringing his killers to justice.
If the evil empire, if you will, can attack a U.S. person assigned in a foreign country and believe that they could attack that person with impunity, then every U.S. person assigned to every embassy throughout the world would become a target for that type of terrorist activity. So Kiki's loss was more than a loss for DEA. It potentially could have been a serious blow to all of the men and women who decide to serve their country in working in foreign assignments.
We were going to find, identify, and prosecute the people responsible. There were a lot of roadblocks, but the people that were working it were dedicated to actually making it happen, to putting those people to trial.
The murder of a federal agent, of a DEA agent, or any federal officer of the United States government is a crime against the laws of the United States, no matter where in the world it's committed. And so it was very important, particularly in this case, that the United States government, with a fine DEA investigation of Operation Leyenda, but that we bring a prosecution against everybody that was that we had evidence of that had been that had conspired or been complicit in the kidnapping and murder of Kiki Camarena.
Interest in every aspect of the Kiki Camarena case was overwhelming. It touched hearts and minds across the country. But obviously, nowhere was the loss felt more deeply or more profoundly than by the Camarena family.
When all this is going on, I remember thinking that I had to be strong. You know, I was 11 years old, and I remembered that whenever my dad would leave for a training or for a trip or, you know, for anything, because sometimes he took trips on work-related stuff, he'd tell me, remember, while I'm gone, you're the man of the house. You know, when we found out he wasn't coming home, I remember thinking, okay, I'm the man of the house.
Mrs. Camarena, President Reagan.
Yes, thank you.
Your husband died for his country in every sense of the word, and we'll remember your husband for his love and his dedication to this country.
Kiki's widow asks if her son can say hello to President Reagan.
I just wanted to say hello.
Well, I'm glad you did. And Enrique, let me just say something to you about your father. Be proud all your life of him. He gave his life for all of us.
Good to see you. I know nothing can help us, but I hope you do know that we all do. Your husband gave his life for this country. I think that as much as if he were in the midst of a war. Indeed, he was in the midst of a war. Hope our children will grow up with the pride they should have. Thank you. be seeing children out there enjoying jelly beans.
Thank you.
For you, this is just a medallion here. Oops.
It slides. I have one request. I'd like for you to sign that for me, please.
I will be very pleased to. Let me just step over to the desk.
Yes.
In response to heavy pressure from Washington, Mexican police in Tijuana late today announced the arrest of 3 suspects in the kidnapping of an American DEA agent. All 3 are Mexican police agents, and it's believed that the American agent was working on a drug case that led into the Mexican police. Sources say at one point last week, National Security Advisor Robert McFarlane told Mullen not to hit the Mexicans too hard. The Justice Department for a week pressed for President Reagan to call Mexican President Miguel de la Madrid to urge a better effort to find the agent. But it was de la Madrid who finally called President Reagan to complain about long delays at the Mexican border. U.S. Customs officials were searching incoming cars looking for any clues on Camarena. The searches have now been scaled back.
I remember the children coming home. I had to tell them that he had been tortured.
Shortly after helping bust a $1 billion marijuana operation, KIKI disappeared, and the family home was suddenly filled with armed agents.
Within about 5 or 6 hours, there's a dozen to 2 dozen agents that arrived.
Were you scared for your father?
Well, your dad's Superman, so you think, we'll see him, he'll be fine.
But KIKI had been kidnapped. Enrique remembers how he and his brothers were rushed out of Mexico to the U.S.
This linebacker of a man picks me up, and fireman carries me and runs full sprint from my living room to a waiting vehicle.
Kiki Camarena's body was found a month later. He'd been tortured to death with a drill. Years later, when Enrique was deciding on his own career, one late-night conversation with his father stuck in his mind.
He asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I said, I want to be just like you. And the answer was a swift, no, you're not. Wasn't going to have a law enforcement son.
So the son stayed away from law enforcement, but not the law. Enrique became a prosecutor.
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
And was appointed judge in 2014.
Good morning, everyone.
Where he now presides over cases involving children.
Red Ribbon Week, y'all remember that shit as a little kid? Bro, the whole reason that shit was even made, it was for the DEA agent that got kidnapped. That's fucking crazy.
The death of any law enforcement officer in the line of duty is a tragedy. But what befell Kiki Camarena, the brutality and callousness of it, seemed to strike a more sensitive nerve, to touch people at a deeper level. And they haven't forgotten. In March of 1985, Kiki came home to his family and his country. The circumstances of his death were the focus of a book and a television movie. He is fully remembered in his hometown, and impressive as all that is, his most vivid legacy is the Red Ribbon Program, which was launched that very month and year to honor his work and his memory.
Drug-free me.
NFP and Red Ribbon go back from the very beginning because once the people saw the celebration in California, spontaneously parent groups all over the nation started wearing the red ribbon and doing simple things with school children and in communities. And then in 1986, Miami and San Diego both created a whole community-wide campaign where you involved all the sectors of the community and the Red Ribbon campaign.
Like many positive things, the roots of Red Ribbon Week are found in something negative. The fate of DEA Special Agent Enrique Camarena. But it is in this affirming and humane endeavor that his living legacy is richly preserved. Kiki would have been very proud.
Mica Camarena, the widow of Enrique Kiki Camarena, was the keynote speaker at a Rio Grande City Red Ribbon rally today. Our CBS 4's Michelle Vargas got an exclusive interview with her and what it means for her to fight the war that killed her husband.
Geneva Mica Camarena made a special guest appearance in Rio Grande City to speak to students about the true meaning of Red Ribbon Week. After her husband DEA Enrique Kiki Camarena was kidnapped, tortured, and murdered by Mexican cartel in 1985, Red Ribbon Week was started as a way to commemorate his life and his efforts to stop drugs from entering our country. Geneva says the moment she became a widow, Red Ribbon Week gave her a new purpose.
It helped me get up and start believing what my mission was.
Despite efforts to end drug use in the United States, the question at hand is whether the battle will ever end. Camarena's response:
Tell you the truth, no. But that doesn't mean we won't continue fighting.
Camarena travels the country spreading awareness on drugs as a way to carry on her late husband's legacy. However, she is disappointed in the states that have legalized marijuana.
Kiki suffered for 2 days because of marijuana. And so it was just, to be honest with you, it was like a slap in my face, and it was heartbreaking for me.
Red Ribbon Week is celebrated from October 23rd until October 31st throughout the nation. Those who participate will be wearing a pinned red ribbon. Camarena is proud that her husband continues to positively impact thousands of lives.
After 31 years, and I go to visit schools, there's always going to be a time when one of the children will come and say, "I'm sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry you lost your husband." And it's incredible. They weren't even born yet, you know, and yet it's made an impression on them.
A DEA agent who died trying to keep drugs off of American streets. His heinous death made headlines around the country decades ago.
And today, millions of students wore red ribbons in his honor, pledging to stay drug-free. As Meg Ferris reports, the agent's widow traveled to New Orleans to keep his mission alive.
DEA Special Agent Enrique Camarena was only in his late 30s when he was kidnapped and killed by drug traffickers in Mexico in 1985. Since then, his widow continues his mission.
Enrique lived a short life, but he accomplished so much. He was a good father, a good husband, and a spectacular DEA agent, and we miss him very much.
New Orleans DEA agents joined her at Nelson Charter School in Gentilly for Red Ribbon Week, the week named in her late husband's honor. She still sheds tears when she delivers her message of how deadly drugs are.
I learned to understand his work more after he left, and I realized that the community needed to do a lot more. We needed to help law enforcement.
And some of our viewers may not know this, but isn't one of Camarena's sons prominent in the legal field here in San Diego?
We end tonight on this Father's Day with the story of a son who followed his father's footsteps, not into law enforcement, but the law. Here's Carter Evans.
America first saw Enrique Camarena 33 years ago when the death of his father, Kiki Camarena, made national news. It was 1985, and the Camarenas were living in Guadalajara, Mexico. Enrique was only 11 years old, but he understood that his father was working undercover for the DEA.
He was keeping drugs from coming to the United States.
And the reason that I say that, bro, is because, like, Kiki Camarena, he was in Mexico, And like he himself, in the recordings that they took from him, it said like, I never, like, that he wasn't trying to speak more than he knew type shit, you know, and he knew that he wasn't supposed to type shit. That he was only trying to leave up out of there, bro. Like he wasn't, like he was there to do what he had to do and go home.
Federal prosecutors in Los Angeles have released transcripts of tape recordings said to have been made by Mexican kidnappers who killed a U.S. drug agent in 1985. Jerry Bowen has the story.
The newly disclosed evidence in the more than 3-year-old torture murder case of DEA agent Enrique Camarena and his Mexican pilot graphically details the unrelenting interrogation by his Mexican captors. The 2 days of beatings and questioning tape recorded at the estate of one of his accused killers outside Guadalajara indicate his kidnappers wanted to know what drug agents knew of this man, reputed Mexican drug baron RAFAEL Quintero, and other top-level members of the so-called Mexican drug family, wanted the names of informers. What had he reported on Quintero and the others, the interrogator asked. I have not reported them, sir, responded Camarena, because for the same reason that I did not want trouble. I just wanted to get out of here. The transcript indicates the tape recorder was shut off when Camarena was beaten, that he pleaded for his family not to be harmed, pleaded for the beatings to stop. Camarena to his interrogator. Even though one might not want to, one remembers with the beating you have just given me. And as I am remembering, I will tell you everything I know.
And yes, bro, it is known now that Kiki Camarena, he was corrupt.
Camarena no parecía ser un agente de oficina.
Conocía de alguna manera la cultura de mi país. Se empapa de cómo en la Perla Tapatía, en los restaurantes, en los círculos empresariales, estos criminales se rozaban con el poder gubernamental, con cualquier persona que pudiera servirles para sus propósitos, ya fuera para lavar dinero, para mover drogas e incluso para conseguir mujeres.
El roce con sus fuentes tenía su precio.
Se hablaba de que como todo agente involucrado en esos años, que no había tanta rendición de cuentas, cometió algunos pecados. El propio Berreyes me contó que tenía problemas pues de alcohol por andar juntándose mucho con criminales, con políticos.
Guadalajara estaba bajo el control de un triunvirato intocable de narcos. Miguel Ángel Félix Gallardo, Ernesto Fonseca Carrillo y Rafael Caro Quintero.
Lo creía muy pendejo, yo creo.
Pero como él conocía también a Rafael y todo eso.
Sí, ahí andaba mi ponente. Ahí andaba, nomás que no podía entregarlo.
And the other thing that like a lot of people don't understand, the reason that he got kidnapped is because there was a ranch, bro. And this ranch, it was not the ranch that they talk about, Buffalo Ranch, no.
Según datos proporcionados por el teleauditorio, 12,000 toneladas de marihuana.
Chihuahua, Mexico. Local television reports Mexican police have carried out the largest drug raid in history. 4.4 million pounds of marijuana destroyed. More than 3,000 campesinos detained. But despite the raid, marijuana remains a billion-dollar industry. According to U.S. drug enforcement officials, since 1982, marijuana production in Mexico is up 700%.
This ranch, it was a really big ranch that was getting used by the cartel to land all the cocaine, all the planes. Like all the planes that were coming from Nicaragua, them bitches were landing there.
To keep the Contras armed and fighting, according to the Tower Commission, the White House started the secret weapons network in 1984. Those organizing the gun shipments included former and current CIA operatives. But what wasn't in the Tower Commission report is that among those recruited to fly weapons to Central America were known drug traffickers.
We're talking about millions and millions of dollars.
Do you really believe the government decided to get into the drug business in order to pay for the Contras? The American government.
As incredulous as it may sound, I believe that not only decided to get into it, I think they orchestrated the whole thing.
Mike Tolliver is a pilot whose principal occupation has been smuggling drugs. He's currently serving a 3.5-year sentence in a federal prison in Miami for a conviction unrelated to the secret flights he made for the Contras. He says he was approached in 1985 by longtime CIA operatives to run what they called supplies.
It was military supplies, and I didn't have to be a real dummy not to figure out what that was.
What did you figure it was?
Guns, ammunition for the Contras, and that as an extra added bonus, we could either freelance on the way back.
Meaning what?
Well, meaning we could bring back our own cargo, and they would arrange it, or we could bring back their cargo without ever having to worry about interception, arrest, anything like this, that everything was taken care of.
What kind of cargo were you talking about?
Drugs.
What kind of drugs?
Whatever you wanted, marijuana, cocaine.
Whatever you want to come back with, fine, we can make sure you don't get hit by customs.
It was my understanding that they would make sure we wouldn't get caught. They would provide not only the cargo, but the landing areas, crews, everything.
For drug runs?
Yeah.
They would also provide the drugs if you wanted?
Absolutely, which indeed they did.
Why would the CIA allow drug planes to come into the United States loaded with coke for the U.S.?
Money.
George Morales, the leader, here in the 1983.
George Morales is a world champion boat racer. He is also a world-renowned cocaine trafficker whose empire extended from Colombia to Miami. Morales was indicted for running cocaine in 1984. He says the CIA used his indictment to pressure him into providing planes, pilots, and $3 million in cash to the Contras. He, too, is in federal prison awaiting sentencing on the 84 charge. So you're saying drug planes were allowed into the States as long as somebody was kicking some money into the Contra coffer?
Definitely.
Is this like just a one-time occurrence?
No.
Somebody snuck in?
No.
Frequent?
Yes.
Routine?
Yes.
Believe it or not, the entire business is compartmentalized. You've got, I'm like a teamster. You know, I'm in transportation. You got people that are in loading. You got people that are in offloading. You got people that are in distribution. People that are in sales. You know, it's like an IBM situation.
Tolliver says he had 2 meetings with this man, RAFAEL Quintero, a veteran CIA contract agent who was coordinating secret weapons flights for the covert network. Then Tolliver made 2 flights. In March of 1986, he was instructed to fly to Honduras. He landed at the airstrip at Aguacate, a Contra resupply base set up by the CIA.
We had about 28,000 pounds of military supplies, guns, ammunition, things like that.
And when you landed in Honduras, no checking, no customs, no inspection?
Well, I didn't think the customs people were going to be out there in the jungle, to be honest with you.
What kind of cargo were you bringing back?
25,000 and change a pot.
25,000 pounds of pot?
Marijuana. Same plane.
And same people you believe set you up with the arms?
Exactly. Oh, of course
That
it
also
was.
set you up with the 25?
Sure.
25,000 pounds of pot?
And change, yeah, that's what the piece of paper they gave me said 25, I think 360.
So what do you do with that 25,000 pounds of pot?
We take off from Tegucigalpa, Honduras, and we leave.
To?
South Florida.
Where in South Florida?
We landed at Homestead.
Homestead?
Air Force Base.
You brought 25,000 pounds of marijuana and landed it at Homestead Air Force Base?
That's correct.
With whose clearance?
I was given a discreet transponder code to Squawk about 2 hours south of Miami. I received my instructions from the ground for traffic separation and told them what my destination was.
What did you say?
I told them that we were a non-scheduled military flight into Homestead Air Force Base.
What happened when you landed?
We landed about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess. And a little blue truck came out and met us, and it had a little white sign on it that said, "Follow me."
And you did?
2 flashing lights, and we followed it, right.
To where?
Some area of the field. I have no idea. I've never been there before or since.
Were you surprised you were going to land all this pot at
Well, I was a little taken
base?
aback, to be honest with you. I was somewhat concerned about it. I figured it was a setup. They were going to, you know, or it was a DEA bust or a sting or something like that.
And instead, nothing happens to you?
No, the little guy in the truck puts us in the pickup truck and takes us out, and I get in a taxi cab.
Did you get paid for the flight?
$75,000.
Tolliver identifies this as the plane he flew. The plane traces to a company that was hired by the government to fly humanitarian supplies to the Contras. At the same time, Tolliver made his flight.
Convicted drug smuggler Mike Tolliver, who's been doing time at the federal prison in South Dade, says he flew 2 Guns for Drugs missions in 1986. Missions we first told you about last February in a series of exclusive eyewitness news reports. Tolliver's flights took guns to the Contras based in Honduras and returned with plane loads of drugs into South Florida. In one case, landing at Homestead Air Force Base. Tolliver says he conducted the missions following directives of contacts who have ties to the CIA. They took place at a time when U.S. military aid to the Contras was banned by Congress and therefore illegal.
From
a designated place, take down X number of guns or ammunition, but on the way back, we've got full sanction to do whatever we want to.
On his first Guns for Drugs mission in March of last year, Tolliver says he took this DC-6 from Miami International Airport. It was loaded with crates containing guns and ammunition.
They had a red cross on the package, like they were medical supplies.
He flew from Miami to Aguacate, a clandestine airstrip used by the Contras in Honduras. There, the shipment is unloaded by people wearing military uniforms. One of them, American Sam Hall, released earlier this year after caught spying on a Nicaraguan Air Force base. Tolliver then flies the empty cargo plane to Tegucigalpa, where he stays at a local hotel. A few days later, he returns to the plane and finds that it's been loaded with 25 tons of marijuana. He takes off for South Florida, and while en route, is ordered to land at Homestead Air Force Base.
We were told when they called us on the 20-meter radio to be there at a certain time. They, pretty well figured out ground speed and things like that, and to just go ahead and enter the pattern, and land.
Tolliver says he was met by a blue pickup truck that had a "Follow Me" sign on it, and by a man wearing fatigues. He was driven to the gate and left the base in a taxi. His reaction?
I'm really kind of befuddled. I'm not understanding why, if the U.S. government, because this is the U.S. Air Force Base, is importing marijuana. They got all of it in the world. They seize it.
Tonight we're going to tell you more about Mike Tolliver, a convicted drug smuggler who says he flew 2 Guns for Drugs missions to the Contras last year. Missions he was hired for, he says, by CIA-linked contacts, including DEA informant Barry Seal. Who are these people, and how did Mike Tolliver get hooked up with them? Tolliver's story goes like this. The feelers were put out 2 years ago when Tolliver got a phone call from Barry Seal. Seal, one of DEA's most productive informant pilots, was murdered in February of 1986 by Colombian hitmen.
Everybody and his brother knew that Barry was working for the government. The CIA specifically.
Seal told Tolliver he had a job for him.
I want you to go to Miami, stop over there, wait for a contact, and they'll tell you what to do. Okay. Interesting flying, working for the government.
Tolliver follows the instructions and flies to Tegucigalpa, Honduras, where he meets contact Wayne Westover, another pilot who knew Barry Seal. Westover is now doing time in a Miami federal prison on an unrelated drug conspiracy charge.
It was my job simply to see that he got introduced.
Introduced at a local hotel to a Honduran liaison for the Contra supply operation. Later, he comes face-to-face with this man, veteran CIA operative RAFAEL Quintero, who lives in Miami. Eyewitness News has been unable to reach him.
This guy, Rafa, seemed like he was like the boss. Rafa said, don't worry, so we have the cooperation of the government.
In January of '86, Quintero sends for Tolliver to meet with him in Ecuador. Quintero tells Tolliver he's to work with a new contact, replacing Barry Seal. That contact is a man Tolliver later identifies as Felix Rodriguez. Rodriguez, alias Max Gomez, another Cuban exile with CIA ties who has worked closely with Quintero. A few months later, Tolliver gets his final instructions from Rodriguez.
Don't bring anything with you. Don't bring any maps. Don't bring identification.
In March '86, Tolliver takes this DC-6 loaded with guns from Miami to Aguacate, Honduras, where he says he's not the only gun runner on the ground.
Sometimes it looks like LaGuardia.
He flies back 25 tons of marijuana, landing at Homestead Air Force Base. While DEA, Customs, and Homestead totally deny Tolliver's claims, he is expected to tell his story to federal and congressional investigators in Washington next month. With an I-Team report, Susan Candiotti, Channel 10 Eyewitness News. This internal memo, written by Assistant U.S. Attorney Jeffrey Feldman and obtained by Eyewitness News, is raising questions about the U.S. Attorney's approach to an investigation of a government-linked Contra supply network in South Florida, a network operating at a time when U.S. military aid to the rebels was illegal. The document stamped sensitive.
How do you know the CIA was aware of these drug planes entering the state?
They actually saw the transaction.
They saw the drug transaction?
Yes.
You mean like unloading a plane full of coke, or
yes.
what? They saw that?
Yes.
Here in the state?
No.
Where?
Out of the state.
Central America?
Yes.
According to Morales and 7 other sources, weapons from the United States were shipped here to northern Costa Rica, only miles from the Contra War. They say the planes landed at several airstrips controlled by this man, John Hull, a CIA operative placed by the Tower Commission in several meetings with Oliver North.
Let's get it. Shout out to Free Ricky Ross. Bro, there's a little section right here that also Free Ricky Ross is involved in this whole Contra shit. We're gonna go into that also. John Hall, fam, he was put there by the CIA and the Tower Commission, bro. The Tower Commission was also the people that told Barry Seal smugglers what they were gonna do after he died, bro. And the people that were telling them that, remember, it was Rafael Quintero, which was the CIA operative that lives in Miami. I don't even know if that man is still alive.
Tonight we're going to tell you more about Mike Tolliver, a convicted drug smuggler who says he flew 2 guns for drugs missions to the Contras last year. Missions he was hired for, he says, by CIA-linked contacts, including DEA informant Barry Seal. Who are these people, and how did Mike Tolliver get hooked up with them? Tolliver's story goes like this. The feelers were put out 2 years ago when Tolliver got a phone call from Barry Seal. Seal, one of DEA's most productive informant pilots, was murdered in February of 1986 by Colombian hitmen.
Everybody and his brother knew that Barry was working for the government. I mean, the CIA specifically.
Seal told Tolliver he had a job for him.
I want you to go to Miami, stop over there, wait for a contact, and they'll tell you what to do. Okay. Interesting flying, working for the government.
Tolliver follows the instructions and flies to Tegucigalpa, Honduras, where he meets contact Wayne Westover, another pilot who knew Barry Seal. Westover is now doing time in a Miami federal prison on an unrelated drug conspiracy charge.
It was my job simply to see that he got introduced.
Introduced at a local hotel to a Honduran liaison for the Contra supply operation. Later, he comes face-to-face with this man, veteran CIA operative RAFAEL Quintero, who lives in Miami. Eyewitness News has been unable to reach him.
This guy, Rafa, seemed like he was like the boss. Rafa said, don't worry, so we have the cooperation of the government.
In January of '86, Quintero sends for Tolliver to meet with him in Ecuador. Quintero tells Tolliver he's to work with a new contact, replacing Barry Seal. That contact is a man Tolliver later identifies as Felix Rodriguez. Rodriguez, alias Max Gomez, another Cuban exile with CIA ties who has worked closely with Quintero. A few months later, Tolliver gets his final instructions from Rodriguez.
Tolliver says he had 2 meetings with this man, Rafael Quintero, a veteran CIA contract agent who was coordinating secret weapons flights for the covert network. Then Tolliver made 2 flights.
But now that I know John Hall was put there by the CIA...
A half-dozen sources call Hull a key player in North's secret weapons network. They say it was under Hull's direction that the guns were taken off the planes and the cocaine loaded on, destined for the United States.
There's never been any drug movement through this zone or through any of our farms, because on each farm the foreman has a log of every airplane that lands, of all the movements that's made there. And we have kept these not for me, but for the Costa Rican narcotics people.
It's kept by your employees. Ostensibly, if you're any good at doing this kind of thing, you wouldn't put it in the law.
I'm not that good, Jane. There's never been anyone land here that I didn't know exactly who they were.
You are aware of planes loaded with drugs and planes loaded with weapons landing and using the airstrips of John Hall?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
How do you know all these mercenaries? How do they know you?
They came through here on their way. We talked to them. They stayed overnight. They had breakfast here, and they wanted to know where to go and which road to take to get to the northern border.
They say you were running Contra operations on lands that you own or manage.
That's not true.
Never have?
Never have. I never will.
Did you ever use his farm for camps for your Contras?
Si.
Until this year, Eden Pastor ran the largest Contra operation on the Southern Front. He was supplied off and on for 4 years by the CIA. He says John Hall was a critical link in the CIA supply line, receiving weapons from the United States, storing them, and moving them out to the Contra troops. If I told you he says he doesn't work for the CIA, he says he was never involved in any of this stuff. He says he was merely a man who transported the wounded. Is that true?
Bueno, está en juego su palabra con el de la CIA.
Well, it's his word against that of the CIA.
El jefe de la CIA en Costa Rica a mí me dijo que era de la CIA.
The head of the CIA in Costa Rica told me that he was CIA.
You're certain he did things other than just transport wounded soldiers?
¿Usted es cierto que él hizo cosas afuera de transportar heridos? Soldados heridos?
Me transportó a mí.
He transported me.
Into 1985, secret weapons shipments from the United States were being moved through El Salvador. One of those shipments flew out of Fort Lauderdale's executive airport in March, destined, those who loaded it say, for John Hull's farm.
We loaded a shipment of arms, about 6 tons. There was machine guns, 60s, motor tubes, C4.
Jesus Garcia is an avid Contra supporter, in jail in Miami on a weapons charge. He says the CIA sanctioned the shipment.
The arms were for John Hall.
John Hall's?
John Hall's farm.
For whom?
For John Hall.
Was the CIA behind the weapon shipments, or the National Security Council, or the White House in any way that you're aware of?
I don't know about directly, but I know they had to have had knowledge. Absolutely. There's no way you can circumvent all the things. There's no way you can land at a military airport in El Salvador with a plane at a military airport unless somebody cleared it. A charter, commercial, civilian plane lands at a military airport. Somebody had to arrange it. Somebody had to arrange that.
Anybody ever check the plane?
What do you mean check the plane? They unloaded it.
Weapons and all.
I was very surprised. I thought we were going to land on a dirt strip and be sneaky about it. Not these guys.
They're saying that you were involved in running weapons down to Costa Rica for the Contras. What do you say to that?
Tell him to talk to your lawyer.
See, yeah. You better talk to my lawyer about it. That's the main thing.
Rene Corbo, a Cuban-American from Miami, arranged that Fort Lauderdale shipment according to those on board the plane. Corbo is said to be one of Hull's key operatives, said to have commanded a camp inside Nicaragua that John Hull allegedly supplied. The allegation runs that there was a load gathered in Miami, including 20-millimeter cannons, 50-caliber machine gun, mortars, high explosives, loaded up on a plane in Fort Lauderdale, taken through El Salvador, and then landed here at John Hull's farm.
That's flat not true. I can guarantee you 1,000% that isn't true.
Do you know John Hull?
Yes, I do.
How is it that you know him?
How is it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to talk about that, okay?
Why not?
Because I don't want it.
Do you know Rene Corbo?
I have met Rene Corbo there again one time. He came into my... I might have met him twice.
Did they do this in the middle of the night? Perhaps they did it and he wouldn't be aware of it? Is it possible?
Basically, in the middle of the day.
Middle of the afternoon?
Yeah.
Broad daylight?
Yes.
How much was he getting for each landing when you would come through with a drug plane?
That amount was $300,000.
I took 2 loads, small aircraft loads, of weapons to John Hull's ranch in Costa Rica and returned back to Florida with approximately 1,000 kilos of cocaine.
1,000 kilos of cocaine?
Yeah, 500 each trip.
Gary Betzner was one of George Morales' top pilots. He, too, was in federal prison in Miami on an unrelated drug conviction. His sentence is 15 years. Like Morales and Tolliver, he has little to gain from talking about these drug flights. None of what they say here will shorten their sentences for their other convictions. Who would load that cocaine down in Costa Rica? Who would accept the weapons? Who would load the cocaine?
Most people that were hired by John Hull or working for him would load the aircraft. In both cases, John Hull was there. And
he physically saw the weapons coming in?
Physically saw the weapons coming in.
Did he physically see the cocaine going out?
He physically saw the bags.
How did you know you were landing at the right strip?
Because I was communicating by radio.
And they were expecting you?
Mm-hmm.
So you called in?
Mm-hmm.
You said, this is Mr. Betzner, and I have this load.
No. I just called in and I went, and a whistle came back, right? And I said, I'm 20 minutes out or whatever. I said, okay. And I landed.
Where did the cocaine come from?
The cocaine was there when we offloaded the weapon because they had the fuel on the same truck with the coke. The second trip I went down, I didn't go back into John Hull's place. I went into another strip that was maybe 10 or 15 miles east of the place. with a little better strip.
What exactly was in the plane that you flew from Fort Lauderdale?
Well, there was some C4 explosives, M60 machine gun. It was stacked all the way to the ceiling.
How many pounds of weaponry?
I would estimate around 2,500 pounds. Well, I understood right away it wasn't the private guns that went down that were that important. It was what was coming back. They could buy much larger and better and more sophisticated weapons.
Eyewitness News has talked to two of these men, both now in prison. As incredible as it may sound, they claim that drugs for guns exchanges to help the Contras have been going on for at least 3 years, with the approval of the U.S. government, including the CIA and DEA. Eyewitness News has learned that a counsel to the Congressional Subcommittee on Crime, Hayden Gregory, interviewed a convicted drug smuggler Friday at a federal prison in Southwest Dade. He is Gary Betzner, a former crop duster who admittedly has been on the wrong side of the law for years, piloting drugs into Florida. Betzner told Eyewitness News about 3 drugs for guns trips in 1983 and 84. One was in the spring of 1983, smuggling 6,000 pounds of marijuana. Betzner says he flew a C-47 provided by now-deceased DEA defendant informant Barry Seal. The plane was loaded with 1,200 to 1,500 pounds of explosive mines. The flight originated in the Florida Keys, landing first at Ilopango Airport in El Salvador, where the mines were offloaded. Betzner says he then flew on to Rio Hacho, Colombia, where he picked up 3 tons of marijuana. Then flew back to Great Harbor Key in the Bahamas. On a second trip in July 1984, Betzner claims he flew 500 kilos of cocaine to South Florida aboard a Piper Navajo. This trip from Fort Lauderdale to Costa Rica to a clandestine strip in Central Florida. On the way down, he says he carried a ton of weapons and explosives. On the way back, he brought coke. 1 month later, Betzner claims another drugs for guns mission. He says he took a Cessna Titan from Opa-locka Airport to Costa Rica and back to Opa-locka, bringing back another 500 keys of coke. He says he was paid $350,000 for each of the last 2 trips. Betzner claims that both the CIA and DEA have deserted him.
Dozens of people were recruited into this program with offers of protection from arrest, discounted drugs, and even blackmail. Getting out of this program is harder than retiring from the mafia. And it was unaccounted for cash.
When you were first approached by the CIA and the Contras, how was that approach made? What did they say to the best of your recollection? When was it?
It was right after my indictment in 1984, March 1984. They came to my office. Before that, I have a few meetings with not high-level Contras.
So you'd been doing business with the Contras?
Yes.
But all of a sudden, somebody bigger shows up at your office here in Miami?
Very, very big, yes.
What was the rank? What level CIA person?
Well, he is the contact directly with the CIA and the Contras. He was sort of the advisor. He worked for the CIA to begin with.
Do you know George Morales?
Yes, I know George Morales.
Octaviano Cesar is the man Morales says recruited him to run guns and drugs. Cesar is now an official for a Contra group in Costa Rica. So what you wanted from Morales was planes and cash?
Any type of money. Because if you didn't have the plane, you needed the cash to go and buy the planes. You needed the planes so you can bring in the supplies.
In addition to Morales, 8 separate sources confirm his CIA connection. What is your relationship with the CIA? Your personal relationship?
None.
Betzner claims he also flew some of those alleged CIA-backed missions for George Morales.
The CIA asked me, the Contra leader asked me to do it, and I did it. And they have proof, and I have proof of it.
Morales is an alleged drug kingpin currently in prison awaiting trial. The champion speedboat racer has told investigators he provided planes for the flights, allegedly assisted by DEA, but questions who profited from the drugs. Customs Commissioner Von Raab adds his agency is also moving forward with other investigations into a secret South Florida Contra supply network. We first told you about it in a series of I-Team reports, including a March 1985 arms shipment from Fort Lauderdale International Airport to Ilopango Air Force Base in El Salvador. Participants claim the arms were sent on to the Contra's southern front in Costa Rica. The Charlotte County Sheriff's Department on Florida's west coast has apparently stumbled on a Contra supply operation, suspected of illegal gun running and possible drug smuggling. This is the cargo plane that tipped them off, a DC-4 owned and piloted by Frank Moss. seized after local authorities and DEA traced its tail number to Skymaster Corporation of Miami, a shell company dissolved nearly 7 years ago. Skymaster's registered agent, Miami attorney Wallace Garrick, is currently indicted and awaiting trial for allegedly setting up dummy corporations used by drug smugglers. This DC-4 is part of that same 1985 indictment. On board, investigators found all kinds of documents linking Frank Moss to the Contras, including an address book listing Contra leader Adolfo Calero and the head of the Contras Air Force. Also found papers linking another Moss-owned DC-4 to the Contras. A March 1985 cargo manifest. It outlines a shipment from New Orleans to Tegucigalpa, Honduras. Shipper is R&M Equipment of Miami, located at the Tamiami Gun Shop. Owner Jim McCoy acknowledges the shipment, but says it was headed for the Honduran armed forces, not the Contras. However, Eyewitness News has learned of Moss's additional ties to the Contras. He owned Atlas Aviation, a cargo and maintenance operation used by the Contras in Honduras. Moss denies he's done anything wrong. Customs and DEA aren't so sure. They're both investigating, as well as the State Department and Senate Select Committee on the Iran-Contra affair. With an I-Team report, Susan Candiotti, Channel 10 Eyewitness News.
The U.S. Air Force Base is importing marijuana. You know, they got all of it in the world. They seize it. They want marijuana. Why do they need to bring it in?
The DC-6 Tolliver Flu has an interesting past. It's registered to a dummy corporation called World Air Leasing in Miami. Eyewitness News has traced the company to Alberto Herrero. Sources say he owns one of the companies, paid more than $87,000 by the State Department to fly humanitarian aid to the Contras. At the same time, Tolliver says he was making his Guns for Drugs flights. Tell Eyewitness News, independent counsel Walsh has a sworn statement from an assistant U.S. attorney who overheard Kellner tell Feldman to slow down the case. In Miami, Susan Candiotti, Channel 10 Eyewitness News. Convicted drug smuggler George Morales, an international champion raceboat driver, never had an audience quite like this. And yet here he is taking an oath before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, telling the world he helped the Contras run Guns for Drugs flights from South Florida to the Contras Southern Front in Costa Rica, starting in 1983 through last year.
We're looking for airplanes, money.
Flights from South Florida to the Contras Southern Front in Costa Rica, starting in 1983 through last year.
We're looking for airplanes, money, training, weapons, explosives, any type, any kind of help.
Morales says his Contra contacts were Adolfo Popo Chamorro in Miami, as well as Octaviano Cesar and Marcos Aguado. Both, he says, worked for the CIA. Morales testified he bought weapons in a Miami gun shop and provided the Contras planes, including one documented in this registration paper we showed you in our February I-Team report.
What was in it for you? Why'd you give away these planes?
They promised me that they will take care of the legal activities.
At this point in time, did you make some agreement about running guns down to various locations and bringing drugs back?
Yes, I did. Also buying guns for them, supply safety houses for them in South Florida.
Where was the money coming from?
Drugs.
Morales told the panel he hired about 30 pilots to run Contra flights from Opa-locka and 2 Fort Lauderdale airports, often loading and unloading in broad daylight.
This whole crazy kind of at any cost keep the Contras alive philosophy, which we've seen demonstrated in the other set of hearings, permitted this kind of nefarious enterprise to flourish.
Morales is currently in contempt of a Miami federal grand jury for refusing to testify. He and his lawyers say U.S. Attorney Leon Kellner didn't want to hear his Contra claims a year ago because of political pressure, and that Kellner won't let DEA and Customs interview him now. The U.S. Attorney has not returned our repeated phone calls. Meantime, a Senate and 2 House committees are moving ahead with their investigations, adding they have many more witnesses to call.
A lot of the stuff that was getting shipped, Barry Seal was the one that was shipping this shit, fool. So Barry Seal, he was a U.S. informant because he felt that like they were gonna kill him. Him himself, he opened up his mouth, told the CIA, told the FBI, told everybody, did not know that the FBI and the CIA was also involved in this shit.
Barry Seal, without question, was the most important federal witness in this country.
In the spring and summer of 1984, Barry Seal became the key figure in what federal officials described as the most significant case in drug enforcement history.
Our mission was coordinated by the CIA and the Drug Enforcement Administration of the United States.
The Drug Enforcement Agency, DEA, was using Seal to develop a case against two of the leading cocaine suppliers in the world. At the same time, the CIA was trying to link Nicaragua's Sandinista government to international drug trafficking.
I think that the Central Intelligence Agency and the State Department all along has known that the Sandinista government will go to any means to support and supply and finance their government, regardless of what it takes.
The daring sting operation moved into high gear with meetings with Jorge Ochoa, the eldest son of Fabio Ochoa, reputed to be one of the leading cocaine suppliers in the world. According to subsequent court testimony, Seal was contacted by the Ochoa family about transporting 3,000 kilos of cocaine into the United States from Colombia. This was followed by numerous meetings which were secretly photographed and telephone conversations that were recorded. Finally, arrangements were made to pick up the first shipment of cocaine, about 1,500 pounds, at an airstrip controlled by the Ochoa family in the Colombian jungles. The mission almost ended there when Seal's plane, overloaded with cocaine, crashed and burned. A second plane was provided by the Ochoas. Seal took off for the United States with instructions to stop in Nicaragua, where arrangements for refueling had been made. But Seal said a mix-up caused more problems.
We took a round in the left engine climbing out over the mountains in the clouds, and we lost the left engine, and we had to go back and make an emergency landing at the Sandino Managua International Airport about 10 o'clock at night. And we're immediately surrounded by the armed forces there, and we were hustled off and thrown in prison for a couple of days until the newspapers calmed down. The way they reported it to the newspapers was a local flight had taken off and had lost its way, and that the gunfire was tracer bullets shot by the anti-aircraft guns to show the pilot where to land at.
Following the Nicaraguan mishap, the cocaine was stashed near the airstrip, and Seal returned to the United States for yet a third airplane. This was the aircraft known as the Fat Lady, a C-123 military cargo plane. It would be manned by Seal and two other Louisiana men, co-pilot Emil Camp, who was later killed in a plane crash in Arkansas, and engineer Peter Everson. When Seal told his DEA contacts about the Nicaraguan stopover and about the apparent involvement in the drug deal by soldiers and officials of the Sandinista government, the CIA jumped into the case, rigging the cargo plane with a camera.
The camera was mounted here on this bulkhead by the CIA. They had a remote control camera enclosed in an electronics box with a small eye on it so that it looked like an electronic gizmo inside the airplane.
The remote control camera produced a remarkable set of photographs. The man wearing the fatigue hat is a Nicaraguan soldier.
Got the airplane completely ready to go, and about 5 minutes before departure time, the Army brought in the truckloads, the duffel bags full of cocaine, and they were loaded on board the aircraft by the Cuban and Sandinista soldiers.
The man facing the camera is Federico Vaughn, an aide to the Interior Minister in Nicaragua's Sandinista government. The photographs of Vaughn sent out shockwaves all the way to the White House.
The Sandinistas have even involved themselves in the international drug trade. I know every American parent concerned about the drug problem will be outraged to learn that top Nicaraguan government officials are deeply involved in drug trafficking. This picture, secretly taken at a military airfield outside Managua, shows Federico Vaughn, a top aide to one of the 9 commandantes who rule Nicaragua, loading an aircraft with illegal narcotics bound for the United States. No, there seems to be no crime to which the Sandinistas will not stoop.
They got this man, picked him up, like I'm talking about KIKI, CAMARENA. They picked him up to see what he knew about that ranch, bro. They were also using it to train all of the soldiers for Nicaragua. That war that was going on, our government did not want to fund it, bro. They were working with people in Mexico, bro. They were selling cocaine. And like the whole reason that like I know that it was the CIA, there was this dude, his name is Torre Blanca. The Torre Blanca, he was a CIA operative in Mexico. The DFS in Mexico is the Secret Service of Mexico. A lot of people don't know that shit. So the Secret Service of Mexico, one of them is named Torre Blanca. The reason that his name is Torre Blanca is because he was the one that put up all the towers to communicate around this bitch, bro. For all the planes to be landing, to be communicating around the world, stuff like that. He was a communications guy.
So at the very beginning, I started to think something's wrong here. Something doesn't smell right. Then I am able to recruit, believe it or not, a CIA operative working in Mexico. I had witnesses that were telling me that there was this white guy, Anglo, that was working within the Mexican Directorate of Federal Security, the DFS. They called him, his nickname was Torre Blanca because it means White Tower. And they called him White Tower because he was a very tall Anglo guy that was almost 6-7 feet tall. And I wondered, what is this guy doing working with the DFS in Mexico? That's incredible. I knew that the DFS had something to do with Kiki's kidnapping, so I reached out to this guy. He had to have known what was going on during the time that Camarena was picked up. I called him and I told him, I said, listen, I'm in charge of the Camarena case, and I know you're working with the DFS, and as you and I know, the DFS was involved in the kidnapping of Camarena, and I need you to come talk to me. And he said, I'm not going to talk to you. He said, Hector, you don't even know what you're involved in. He said, leave me alone. And I said, listen, if you don't cooperate with me, I'm going to kidnap your white ass, and I'll bring you up here. And you know that I'm serious, and you know that I'll do it, because I've already kidnapped one guy out of Mexico, referring to Dr. Machine. And I said, I'll kidnap your white ass. So he said, okay. He said, I'll meet with you. He said, you know I can't go down there, because by then I had a warrant for my arrest for kidnapping Dr. Machine, who had injected drugs into Camarena. So he said, okay. He said, what are we going to do? I said, I want to send some of my agents to meet with you in Guadalajara, and I want you to talk to them, but I really need you to come to the United States and talk to me. So basically, I sent 4 agents down there. They set up a meeting at a hotel room in Guadalajara. An agent from Mexico City by the name of Del Simpson shows up, and he says he's been told to participate in the interview. My agents called me and they said, hey, something strange has happened. He said, another agent from Mexico City just arrived by the name of Del Stinson, who said he's been ordered to partake in the interview with Harrison. I said, I don't have a problem. Go ahead and let him participate. Well, this DA agent named Del Stinson requested to speak with Larry Harrison alone, without basically away from being observed by my agents. He met with Larry in the hotel room alone. 3 minutes later, Larry Harrison, the CIA guy, comes out and says, hey, listen, I want nothing to do with you guys. I don't want to cooperate, and left, upset. My agents then asked Del Stinson, what happened? And he said, well, I don't know. I guess the guy's got cold feet. He doesn't want to cooperate after all. And that was it. They came back empty-handed.
So when they met up, Torre Blanca told him our government was the one that killed him.
It took me a year to find this guy again because he went and hid. I finally found him hiding in the Oaxaca mountains of Mexico. I got him on the phone again, and I said, Larry, you need to come talk to me. There's no place you can run or hide. You see, I will always find you. You better come over here and cooperate with me. He said, okay, I'll agree to meet with you, but only in the United States, and nobody must know that I'm coming. We flew him to Los Angeles. I met with him, and during my initial interview, he told me, he said, Hector, he says, you don't know what you've gotten yourself into. We killed Kiki Camarena. I said, what do you mean we? He says, we both work for the same government. I'm a CIA operative, he said, and Camarena was ordered, kidnapped, and to be interrogated by my agency, the CIA, and NSC.
This is actually a subject, bro, that I've been wanting to talk about. Rafael Caro Quintero, in the 1980s, he was one of the big kingpins from Mexico, bro. He was the person that our weed that we smoke today, the reason that it don't have seeds, he figured out how to mess with it and create a new strain called Sin Semilla. Everything that was around, it had seeds. It was Reggie. So what he was able to do, you know how today everything is greenhouse? So he was able to do the greenhouse grows back then. And his shit was like so big, bro, so big to the point where it could fund his empire for a whole year. There was this officer that his name was Kiki Camarena. Kiki Camarena was sent to Mexico. He raided a ranch, but a lot of people believe that the ranch that he raided was the Buffalo Ranch. Kiki Camarena never raided that ranch. He raided a whole different ranch, but not that ranch.
When I came on into the case, I was told that Camarena had been kidnapped and tortured by the drug lords because he had caused them great losses in seizing 10,000 tons of marijuana at the Buffalo Ranch growing area in Chihuahua, Mexico. That's what I was told and believed until I started looking into the case, and I called the agent that had been in charge of the Buffalo, Chihuahua seizures and asked him what Kiki's involvement was. And he told me, to my surprise, he said, Hector, Kiki Camarena had nothing to do with the seizure of the 10,000 tons of marijuana at Buffalo. I said, are you sure? I am being told here that was the main motive. And he said, Hector, that's a false narrative. They're not telling you the truth. Kiki did not participate in the raids. I know, I ran the raids. So at the very beginning, I started to think something's wrong here.
And a lot of people, they try to say that that's the whole reason that Kiki Camarena was killed. There's this dude for a really long time that, like, I've been watching his interviews. His name is Hector Veledes. I'm probably saying his last name wrong. Well, he was the person that went and kidnapped the doctor that was injecting Kiki Camarena in the heart.
And you know that I'm serious, and you know that I'll do it, because I've already kidnapped one guy out of Mexico, referring to Dr. Machine. And I said, I'll kidnap your white ass. So he said, okay. He said, I'll meet with you. He said, I can't go down there, because by then I had a warrant for my arrest for kidnapping Dr. Machine, who had injected drugs into Camarena.
A lot of people, bro, they really do be saying that Rafael Quintero was the one that sent the order out to kill him. This nigga's whole life, he has always said it wasn't him. There's an interview that's on Spanish, and I transferred it to English. Go ahead and watch it real quick. In 1985, there was an urgent message on the news. The message was that Agent Kiki Camarena had died. The news reported that there is a cartel in Guadalajara and that Rafael Quintero and two others had ordered DEA agent called Kiki Camarena to be tortured, kidnapped, and killed. My question for you today is, did you order the hit on Kiki Camarena? No, I did not order the hit. I did not kidnap him. I did not kill Kiki Camarena. Then what were you involved in? I was at the wrong place at the wrong time. Did you want that to happen to him? Honestly, there was no reason for me to feel like that towards him. The argument was that after they took down your plantation at the Buffalo Ranch, in revenge, you had ordered a hit on the DEA agent called Kiki Camarena. If they had already destroyed the plantation, why would I get involved in something more serious? Why would you say that it's something more serious? Oh, that's the U.S. government you're talking about. So you're saying that you wouldn't mess with the U.S. agent? No, of course I would not. My respects to them. I apologize to the U.S. government if I participated in anything. If I got wrapped up in anything, I apologize to the U.S. government, the DEA, and also Kiki Camarena's family. I have came to a realization that I regret a lot of things that have happened. If I made a mistake in this Kiki Camarena case, I apologize to U.S. government. What I would like moving forward from this, I have paid for my crime already. I could sit here and tell you that I did do it. I have already done the time for it. But no, I did not participate in that. Is that your first time talking about it? I have never spoke out. Never spoke about this case. It's my first time. I'm telling you with a clear voice. I did not kidnap him. I did not torture Kiki Camarena. I did not kill the agent Kiki Camarena that y'all have charged me for. Yes, I was present, but no, that was my only participation. Did you talk to him? Did you interrogate him? No, not at all. And why? Because I didn't kidnap him. Why would I want to talk to him? I wasn't interested in him. You wasn't interested in him. So it wasn't for revenge? Nah, not at all. Do you think the Mexican government knows you didn't kill him? Or do you think they do think you did kill him? I don't know how to explain it to you, but they know I didn't kill him. It's on paperwork. I did not kill Kiki Camarena. Do you think the American government thinks you killed Kiki Camarena? Well, by the looks of it, yes, it does look like it. But the ones that killed Kiki Camarena, the ones that did that, they are dead. If they're not dead, most of them are locked up. A lot of people that are locked up, a lot of them are innocent. Over time, in this generation, it is all going to come out to light. Are you working on a book of Kiki Camarena's case, trying to expose stuff? Yes, honestly, yes. But that's going to come out way later after my case is over with. Whenever you got detained in Costa Rica. They brought you to Mexico. What happened exactly at those moments when they had you in the interrogation room? A lot of things happened. Whenever we were in the interrogation room, he was telling me he knew I didn't kidnap him. He knew I didn't kill him. But he knew I was present. And that is the truth, I was present. But you wasn't charged for criminal activity. No, they charged me with everything they could throw at me. Kidnapping, homicide, torture, everything in which I did not participate in. If you had been charged for only criminal activity, how much time would you have gotten? That's only 10 years. He even says that, like, they already charged him. He already went to jail for everything. So he could go ahead and talk about it. And he still says to this day, it wasn't him. So, like, what a lot of people, they have not searched into, like I was talking about at the beginning of this video, there's a CIA agent. His name is RAFAEL Quintero, which he's a CIA agent from America. And what's like really weird to me is that back then, the reports and the newspapers, they do not call him Rafael Caro Quintero. They refer Caro Quintero as Caro Quintero. The Rafael name stays out of it. Which that's like really weird to me, bro. Felix Rodriguez, they also say that he was involved in this shit. And like, let me go ahead and tell y'all, the thing about Felix Rodriguez, even if he was not involved in killing Kiki Camarena, he was involved in the Contras, bro. And the reason is this, like, how I was saying at the beginning, like Barry Seal, as soon as Barry Seal got killed, the smuggler that was helping Barry Seal, his instructions were changed, bro. The person that changed everything was Rafael Quintero, which was the CIA agent. Here's the picture of him. We have figured out who was the person that killed Kiki Camarena, fam. A lot of people may not believe that shit, but bro, all the research that I have done, fam, and like the Rafael Quintero name pops up, but a lot of people have always thought the kingpin, bro. Now that I have done my research and I have found that a CIA agent name was Rafael Quintero, that gives me more of a reason to think that the CIA was the one that killed their own DEA agent, Kiki Camarena, back in the 1980s. Because, like, what the fuck, bro? Rafael Caro Quintero should be free right now.
Camarena unknowingly, okay, found out that tons of cocaine were being flown into Caro Quintero's ranch in Veracruz. So he started an investigation into that ranch in Veracruz. What Camarena did not know was that that ranch was being used by the NSC and the CIA to train Contras, and they were using that as a transshipment location to ship weapons from there directly to Ilipango, where they were later issued to the Contra freedom fighters.
We're about to get into Felix Rodriguez. Felix Rodriguez was actually the person that I believe that killed him.
Well, Larry explains to me that the reason they blindfolded him was because the people that wanted him interrogated basically were Americans. And there was going to be at least one American that was going to be interrogating Kiki. The plan was not to kill him. The plan was to kidnap him, bring him to a place, interrogate him, waterboard him, not physically, kick him, beat him, which they did. He was supposed to be waterboarded by a waterboarding expert. Their own guy, a CIA operative, was supposed to do the interrogating of Camarena and the waterboarding. And I later identified who this CIA operative was.
So you later identify who the CIA operative was. This the person you're talking to, or the person that was supposed to waterboard him?
No, the person that was supposed to waterboard him. Another major CIA operative, a well-known CIA operative, the CIA operative that kidnapped or basically tracked down Che Guevara in South America and Bolivia and killed him and cut his hands off.
If Fidel got away, his right-hand man and confidant Che Guevara was not so lucky. Che, the romantic hero of the Cuban Revolution, had commanded guerrilla insurgencies in Africa and Latin America. But in 1967, he was captured by a team of Bolivian soldiers and their CIA advisor, Felix Rodriguez, who recalled for us the time he came face to face with his enemy.
I look at him and say, Che Guevara, I'd like to talk to you. And he looked at me very arrogantly and said, nobody talks to me, nobody interrogates me.
But the two men did talk, mostly about Cuba and their opposing philosophies. Rodriguez wanted to bring Che to Panama for interrogation, but the Bolivian High Command ordered Che executed. Rodriguez broke the news to Che.
I looked at him straight in the face and I just told him, Commander, I'm sorry. I try my best. That's all I said, and he understood. He looked straight to me and said, it's better this way. I should have never been captured alive. At that point, he approached me and he shook my hand. I shook his hand. He embraced me. I embraced him. And he pulled back and stood in attention. I left the room and I told the sergeant that there was instruction from his command not to shoot from here up because this man's supposed to die from combat wound, to shoot from here down. And I left.
And then you came back in and saw his corpse.
His face was covered with mud.
His face was covered with mud?
Yeah, I asked for a bucket of water and I washed his face and I took out my handkerchief and tried to close his jaw and his eyes.
You wound up, in a strange way, Felix, admiring Che Guevara, didn't you? I mean, you cleaned his face, conversation about philosophy before he died.
The man died with dignity for what he believed, even though it was wrong. So I think we had mutual respect for each other.
How did the Bolivians prove to Fidel that Che Guevara had indeed been killed?
The commander thought that maybe Fidel would deny it. So he suggested that his head should be cut off.
The Bolivian commander suggested that?
I said, well, you feel so strongly about a tangible proof of it, cut one finger. And we have his fingerprint and they can be checked. So instead of that, he ordered both hands to be cut.
Both hands?
Both hands. Yep.
And that is the picture of both of Che Guevara's hands?
Yes.
I've never seen this picture before.
It had never been publicized anywhere in the world.
And these were sent to Fidel?
The same CIA operative that was involved in putting a bomb on a plane that was leaving Venezuela with the Cuban fencing team blew up in the air.
We know that on board were 57 Cuban nationals, 24 of whom were athletes on Cuba's gold medal fencing team. We know that there were 11 Guyanese nationals, 9 of whom were students who had been awarded government scholarships and who were traveling to Havana to pursue studies in medicine. We know that there were 5 citizens of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, but what we did not know was that the tentacles of international terrorism had reached our shores. At approximately 8 minutes into the flight and at an altitude of 1,800 feet, a bomb exploded on board the plane, starting a fire. The passengers then lived the most horrifying 10 minutes of their lives as the plane turned into a scorching coffin. Captain Wilfredo Perez radioed to the control tower. The cockpit voice recorder captured the last terrifying moments of Cubana Flight 455 at 1:24 p.m. The captain tried returning the plane to Sewell, but its passengers and crew were already doomed. As the plane approached the shores, it was rapidly losing altitude and control. Rather than crashing into the Paradise Beach and killing those on the ground, the pilot courageously banked the plane towards the water back out to sea, where it crashed in a ball of fire.
The time is 1. I think that it was a 5-0. ¿Le podemos ayudar en algo?
Officials investigating the crash said they suspected that the aircraft might have been sabotaged. Their suspicion tied in with an anonymous phone call to a Miami newspaper that a bomb was put on board the plane by Cuban exiles. The sabotage theory was further supported by reports of an in-flight explosion. The plane was on its way from Guyana to Cuba via Trinidad, Barbados, and Jamaica. Shortly after takeoff from Barbados, the captain radioed that he was in difficulty. According to the Sewell Control Tower, as it was then called, he was apparently trying to return to Barbados when the aircraft plunged into 900 feet of water 3.5 miles off the coast of the island. It was almost 3 hours after the crash when the first badly mutilated bodies were brought ashore.
Cuba and Venezuela yesterday marked the 38th anniversary of what some call the deadliest terror attack from the air prior to the September 11th attacks in the United States. In 1976, Flight 455, which took off from Venezuela bound for Cuba, suddenly exploded. All 73 passengers and 5 crew members aboard died after the plane crashed near Barbados. The culprits were found to be targeting Fidel Castro's government. 4 of the terrorists were found to be Latin Americans contracted by the U.S. One of the attack's masterminds, Posada Capriles, currently lives freely in Miami.
The same Cuban that had been assigned to run operations in Vietnam, operations interrogating Viet Cong. He was a major supervisor in Operation Phoenix in Vietnam, a very well-known CIA operative, and a very personal friend of ex-President George W. Bush.
George Bush, the President of the United States, and yours truly?
Yeah.
When was this taken?
That was taken on May the 1st, 1986.
And why were you there with the Vice President?
Well, I had met the Vice President, first of all, the first time was in January. Don Gregg introduced me to him when I was going to El Salvador for the helicopter concept. And I briefed him on the helicopter concept and also showed him an album that I had with the capture of Che Guevara. So the second time I went to visit him. At that point in time, I was planning to leave El Salvador.
Is this a name you've revealed in the book or no?
Is his name revealed in the book? Yes, it is.
What's his name?
Ismael Félix Rodríguez.
Ismael.
AKA, yes, Ismael Félix Rodríguez, AKA Max Gomez. It took me a long time to identify this guy by true name because the witnesses knew him only as Max Gomez.
Did you ever get a chance to meet him face to face?
No, but I would love to.
You would love to meet him?
Yes.
Let's just say you did. What would you do to him?
Well, if I would have met him when I was with DEA, I would have put him in handcuffs. And if I was to meet him now, I'd probably give him one beating for Kiki Camarena.
Era cuando teníamos entrenamiento aquí en Miami, que es el CIA. Félix Rodríguez Mendigutia, retirado de la Agencia Central de Inteligencia. Con el jefe de la Fuerza Aérea, General Bustillo.
Félix Rodríguez es un exagente de la CIA cubano-americano, orgulloso de haber pasado a la historia por la captura del Che Guevara en Bolivia. Entre sus trofeos de guerra guarda una fotografía al lado del líder guerrillero argentino.
Una hora antes de que lo ajusticiaran en Bolivia, 9 de octubre del 67, las manos.
Se refiere a las manos que las autoridades bolivianas le amputaron al Che para tomarle huellas digitales. A sus 80 años, este combatiente anticomunista mantiene un frente de batalla abierto, defenderse de las acusaciones del exagente de la DEA, Héctor Berreyes. Berreyes sostiene que, de acuerdo con 4 testigos del gobierno de Estados Unidos, Rodríguez estuvo presente durante las torturas al agente de la DEA Kiki Camarena en febrero de 1985. Uno de los testigos, según él, es Ramón Lira, ex policía mexicano que trabajaba para los narcos.
Ramón Lira fue el que me dijo, no, ese es de la CIA. Ese señor estuvo en Vietnam, ese señor torturó a Kiki, yo lo vi torturar a Kiki Camarena y interrogarlo, dice. Y yo mismo pensé, qué traicioneros, cómo un agente de la CIA está torturando a otro agente de la DEA cuando los dos son del mismo gobierno.
Yo tengo de principio al fin la muerte de Kiki.
Los informantes hicieron sus señalamientos también en el documental The Last Night de Amazon y en entrevistas para un libro del periodista mexicano Jesús Esquivel.
En algún momento llegó Félix Rodríguez a la casa del cuñado del expresidente Luis Echeverría. No solo quería saber qué había dicho Kiki Camarena, sino también él quería hacerle preguntas.
The kidnapping of an American drug agent in Mexico.
El caso de Camarena fue cubierto ampliamente por las grandes cadenas de televisión de Estados Unidos.
¿Dónde estaba usted cuando se enteró que habían asesinado al agente de la DEA Kiki Camarena?
Mira, yo estaba cuando aquello aquí en Miami, honestamente yo ni me acuerdo de haberlo oído en aquel momento la noticia.
Rodríguez no afronta ningún cargo por la muerte de Camarena. Esta es la primera vez que acepta hablar extensamente de las acusaciones de Berreyes.
Al principio que se hizo una investigación exhaustiva de los hechos, jamás salió que había un cubano y menos yo en esa operación.
Contribution by the Contras for their proportion
La historia de cómo Rodríguez terminó involucrado en este caso tiene que ver con un escándalo que estalló en 1987. Durante un debate del congresista demócrata John Kerry, se reveló que algunos combatientes contras entrenados por la CIA para derrocar al gobierno izquierdista de Nicaragua recibían apoyo económico de los narcos. De acuerdo con Berreyes, el agente de la DEA Camarena había descubierto esa alianza y la CIA estaba muy nerviosa.
A Kiki Camarena lo levantaron para interrogarlo, para ver qué sabía de las operaciones en el rancho de Veracruz, donde estaban entrenando a los contras, donde bajaba la CIA mucha cocaína.
Los interrogatorios fueron grabados, según Berreyes, porque la CIA quería tener un recuento de primera mano.
Cuando los narcos van a matar a una persona, la matan. Los narcos no andan interrogando ni grabando.
¿Qué funciones realizaba usted para la CIA en 1985?
No, yo estaba retirado, no tenía ninguna función con la CIA.
Pero usted en ese momento estaba preparando a los contras.
No. Yo nunca participé realmente en preparar a los contras. Yo visité los contras porque tenía amistades ahí y simpatizaba con ellos.
¿Recuerda cuántas veces estuvo en Guadalajara?
Nunca. Yo nunca he visitado Guadalajara.
Rodríguez nos mostró varias libretas en las que, según él, ha registrado sus actividades diarias desde hace 4 décadas.
Voy a contarles lo que hice exactamente el 6 de febrero. Mire, llamar a Steve, que era Steve Vermillion, un agente del CIA, amigo mío que estaba trabajando aquí en Miami. Entonces llevar a Hugo a las 9 a.m., alquilar un auto. Hugo era el general Hugo Raúl Marcilese, era comandante de la Fuerza Aérea Argentina.
Al día siguiente, su libreta lo ubica en Miami.
El 7 jueves, dice estar en la oficina de tío Fernando, de Fernando Mendigutía, que era mi tío, que era abogado también, a ver a Pierre, ese se llamaba Pierre Hatten, que era un libanés. Ese fue el día 7, que supone el día que mataron aquí en Camarena.
El 8 de febrero, según él, recogió en el aeropuerto de Miami a 3 contras que llegaron heridos de Centroamérica.
La CIA lo puede poner a él en África en el 85. De modo que eso para mí no son pruebas.
Según Berreyes, los testigos del gobierno reconocieron a Félix Rodríguez en una galería fotográfica.
La galería tenía 20 fotos y entre ellas había una foto de Félix Rodríguez.
Eso es mentira, mira. No reconocen nada. A este le dijo el chef, este es Félix Rodríguez. No me puede reconocer porque yo nunca estuve allá. Fue el señor Berreyes que creó toda esta mentira.
Si yo hubiera hecho eso, ¿por qué la DEA no me ha arrestado? ¿Por qué el FBI no me ha arrestado? ¿Por qué la CIA no me mandó a arrestar? Si todo yo lo inventé, varios de los testigos tomaron polígrafo y pasaron el polígrafo.
¿Usted como agente de la CIA practicó interrogatorios?
No. Cuando estaba en Vietnam, los interrogatorios los hacían los vietnameses de nosotros. Eso que me queda que yo era un experto interrogador, eso es mentira.
Nunca le tocó hacer interrogatorios.
Personalmente no. Quizás a lo mejor en Vietnam haciendo algunas preguntas específicas con un traductor de operaciones.
Pero entonces, ¿qué motivaba a Berreyes?
Dinero. Hacer lo que hizo ahora, que hizo una película que tiene que haber ganado dinero con el The Last Narco, y también ahora dice que tengo entendido que está haciendo un libro.
Yo no hice nada por dinero ni por fama. Yo siempre he sido famoso.
Félix Rodríguez salió con una maleta.
Rodríguez calificó de absurda la declaración de uno de los testigos de que los narcos se referían a él con su nombre de guerra, Max Gómez.
Estos imbéciles están diciendo que yo he estado me habían identificado como Max Gómez. No existía el nombre de Max Gómez en ese momento.
El exagente de la CIA negó cualquier conexión de los contras con los narcos.
El informe de Kerry es todo mentira.
Rodríguez y Berreyes solo coincidieron en una cosa.
Busquen a todas esas personas, incluyendo al señor Berreyes y yo, y vamos a poner un detector de mentiras.
Y yo le advierto a él que yo estoy muy dispuesto a tomar el examen, ya tanto sea con el FBI o la DEA. Adelante.